Hi, everyone. Dan Goodstein here with IRPA AI. Welcome to the executive interview series. I'm joined today by Tolani Jaiye-Tikolo. She's the RPA Jargon Buster, longtime advisor to IRPA AI and source of information throughout the industry. Tolani, great to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm so delighted to speak to you today.
No, my pleasure. My pleasure. So, for those of you watching who don't know Tolani, maybe give a little bit of your background and what you're up to these days before we jump in.
So my background is basically from the technical side of things. So I started pretty much in automation 7 years ago. So I started as a developer, and my career has kind of progressed in such a way that I founded RPA Jargon in 2021, and it's what we do is it's simple. We try to provide intelligent automation research, advisory, and consulting. The best part of our consulting is we serve a different kind of market, SME and mid-market, financial services and healthcare. And what we tend to do for them is, help them deliver intelligent automation as very cost affordable prices as well. And yeah, it's just a little bit of what I do. But yeah, I'm really keen to speak to you today.
Yeah, no, same here. And I've been a big fan of Talani's for a long time. She provides a lot of really good kind of insights as to what's going on. We've pushed some of your content to our members over the years, Talani, obviously, and you bring an interesting perspective, right? Because a lot of the people that we speak to kind of started on the business side and are trying to implement these technologies. You really come at it from a technical angle and. I love the jargon buster, play, right? Because there's a lot of complaints about hype and overhype and stuff in the marketplace, and I think it's good that we kind of bring it down to earth. We're going to talk today about intelligent document processing, right? And I guess my first question for you is, where do companies that you're talking to typically start, right? I mean, it seems to me that a lot of organizations kind of figure out the RPA first, and then they try to figure out the IDP. How do you kind of incorporate the two?
I think that's a very good question because a lot of customers and a lot of people I've spoken to usually start from RPI, then do a bit of optical character recognition, use a lot of the legacy character recognition, do one or two things right, and they think that really into the intelligent automation space. In fairness, they are kind of, but they aren't. So there's a lot of progression from that perspective. You go from RPA, incorporate OCR technology, you see the benefit, then it starts becoming a problem when you're thinking about scale. And because of scale, a lot of organizations start leaning towards IDP. Because it gives you that scale. You're looking at 1 million documents. You can process millions of documents. You can incorporate let's say for existing processes as well, you can incorporate IDP. It seems to work around different kind of solutions, and these solutions have existed for a very long time, like your account opening process, your resume processing, your contract processing. These are things that deal with a lot of documents, and companies are really looking at how do they put this in. Now they've really cracked the RPA code, trying to get your center of excellence all going, trying to develop one or two bots. But once you get to that point, you really know that I've tapped into 20% of structured data. I really need to tap into the 80%. And at that point, IDP becomes a leverage, to get into that other side of the 80%, which you don't really use at all.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to ask you about some of those use cases, but before we do, for the person watching who says, "Hold on, Tolani, I'm confused. I'm still focused on the last acronym. What's IDP? I'm doing OCR. I've been doing traditional OCR for many years. What's the difference, and why do you think traditional OCR kind of failed? If so, why?"
So traditional OCR is great. It's good, but it's not great. And the reason why it's not great is the fact that it leans towards technical people. You need to have the technical know-how in terms of trying to process the images, for example, like you get customer documentation. You get for example, someone like me, I know what I do. I have my phone. I'm told to scan something, for example. Then I scan it just a little bit, not too great. I take out, the left part of the page, or the background is all, blurry or whatever. And I start off with that. But the problem with, that is, the optical character recognition has issues with that, in terms of, one, the format has to be it has to be great. You need to know the technical know-how to prep those documents. You need to know the technical know-how to get the document in a good shape of good accuracy as well. But that technical know-how is something that you could potentially eradicate with IDP, because IDP is really built for the business. It's built for what you call the citizen developers. So you don't really need that technical know-how. That's one thing. And I think another selling point, which I tend to tell people as well, is, with OCR technologies, there's a lot of templates. So if you, for example, you have someone in accounts payable that receives different set of invoices. They receive supplier invoice, they receive, all these credit memos and all these documents. And for each of those documents, there are different nuances, because it depends on the number of suppliers you have. The way they would send it to you will be different. You need to create something called a template for all of these documents. And you could imagine if you have 350 suppliers, right? You can imagine trying to create templates for 350, right? And if you have a new supplier that comes in, that becomes 351, which becomes very hard to create that sort of template. But with IDP, IDP solution over the years has become something that is inbuilt with some of these templates. It's inbuilt with some of, like, let's say, documents, open source data as well, where the US invoices, the Canadian invoices, the EU invoices has all been pre-trained within IDP. So most times companies tend to just really get on IDP with a few documents, for example, maybe 10, 20, and train the model and start using the model. So that's really a selling point of IDP. And IDP opens up, more opportunities, because the traditional OCR technologies gives you the inputs to some of the technologies, requires you to have them in PDF. Some will not even support Word documents or some of the different types of new documents. But with IDP, you have access to different things as well. IDP can also work with faxes. IDP can work with, different kind of, different sources, and all these sources can be, can allow documents to be ingested into the platform. So IDP gives you that pipeline. From start to finish, you're able to ingest document, you're able to classify document, you're able to extract document, you're able to pass document, pass the data, structured data to downstream applications. I think that's really the selling point of IDP.
Yeah, it makes sense, Tolani. So, I think the most common, use case that's been talked about for a number of years is the invoice processing. But what are some of the other use cases that you're kind of keen on? And I know you've been doing some work in financial services. Curious if there's any, specific to that industry.
So there is, I think the most, apart from invoice processing, the next one would be something related to account opening. And this is it's really becoming a big thing, especially during COVID. Companies had to, digitize a lot of their processes and move them online. So account opening looked a little bit different, post-COVID. And with account opening, what tends to happen is, in a typical bank or in some other financial industry, it takes about, it could take about 10 to 60 days to actually get an account opened. And all of this is down to a lot of validation, a lot of customer due diligence, trying to get the required document, for example. So, and there's a lot of, documents that needs to be provided by the customer, like your proof of address. If you're into like a limited company and you export, raw materials or whatever it might be, you might need to provide, export license. You might need to provide, proof of address, all of these documents. But the fact is, once these documents are provided, they need to be validated, they need to be verified. And when you have IDP in that mix, doing all of this for you, your IDP is able to spit out, the relevant information, like tell you, oh, this is valid, this is invalid. Your IDP provides all these actionable insights. And from that actionable insight, you can get, you can actually power your RPA bots. And that's something that, RPA couldn't do for you. Most of the time, pre-COVID, a lot of this work was done manually, right? You have the handlers or the branch managers, doing all the verification. So, but now, this can actually be, supported by RPA bots, where your RPA bots can make decisions, can interact with your IDP and make decisions. And these decisions will require them to, can look like, creating, calculating the risk, the risk of, having that customer, calculating, doing a lot of calculations at the back of that, doing a lot of, ordering of, credit cards, debit cards. All of this can all be automated through your RPA bots. So all we're looking at is a frictionless process, a process that could go from 60 days to about 4 days. That is possible, having RPA and IDP at the center of this.
I love that example. This was relevant, pre-pandemic, right? And most organizations were really looking at it from a cost or an efficiency standpoint. But now we're in an environment where speed and ease and being able to do things remotely is a differentiator, right? So if organizations aren't able to do this, they're going to fall by the wayside. And you're right. I mean, people continue to ask me about the state of the RPA industry, and is it sustainable? Is it going to continue to grow? And what I tell them is, if this much data is still not digitized, then the potential is still pretty endless out there, because as we know, garbage in, garbage out. There's only so much RPA can do without the data being fed into it. So what are the different models people should look at, Tolani? Is this kind of like RPA in the sense of it being primarily a license-based service, or what have you seen out there?
So I think they're about, I'll be honest with you, there are about 7 models out there, because
Wow.
When IDP started, a lot of, I think people replicated, your typical software licensing model. So there were a lot of perpetual licensing. So a lot of the data capture technologies that came out from the legacy providers provided, they had perpetual licenses. So you had to pay upfront for the software, for example. And after that software, companies can or even stop paying for the maintenance as well, but they own the software for life. But that becomes a